Hi, I'm Jim. Welcome to the Unbound Performance Podcast, where we explore the world of sports and performance mindset training.
And I'm Caroline. Each week, we talk about the strategies, habits, and mental framework that help us to excel. Let's get into today's episode. Let's talk about it. Tee it up. All right, so tell me what extreme ownership is.
Extreme ownership comes from a title of a book by Jocko Willink, who's a former Navy SEAL commander.
I mentioned him in my solo episode.
Nice.
Did you catch that? If you listen,
yeah, I didn't watch.
Beginning
No,
to
I'm
end,
just kidding. I did watch from beginning to end. Thank you very much. I was going to watch it before I sent it out just to make sure you didn't screw
go
up.
rogue.
Yeah, or say
talk a lot of crap about you. I did the opposite. Thank you very much.
I know, I was a little uncomfortable watching.
See, that's why I said I was like, it's a good thing I'm doing this by myself, because if you were in the room, you'd be like, stop talking,
Yeah,
stop it.
Yeah, it's not about me.
We both.
Yeah, Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL commander. Now he and another former SEAL, Leif Babbitt, they run Echelon Front, which is a kind of a leadership consulting group. And he's written a number of books. Extreme Ownership is one of them, and very impactful, very popular book. I love it. The Servpro business I work with, Team Edwards, that extreme ownership is one of the core values.
Oh, nice.
I think there are just so many ways that principle applies. It's not just like if you're in a leadership position, although I think it just applies. Period.
Everything.
End of story.
Yeah. I think every time something happens, there's a way to adopt that principle in my mind. Like, what's the law of? I don't know. Here's my science background. Like, for every action, there's a reaction or whatever. What's the?
Oh, it's the whatever law of thermodynamics. Yeah.
Oh, was it thermo? That was energy or something like that.
I don't know.
Science was never my thing.
Majored in PE.
But that's what I'm saying. So if it's for every action, positive action, there's a reaction or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I
equal
think that's
and opposite reaction.
That's the one.
It's all coming back to me. But I think whether it's performance related, if you have certain goals you want to accomplish, it's very easy to look at obstacles or circumstances that could be in your way or prevent you from accomplishing them. Well, rather than come up with a good excuse and
just what went wrong in general, like
blame someone else, blame your lot in life or whatever. No, you have to embrace whatever challenges are in your path and bam, right through them, over them, around them, under them, whatever. From a leadership standpoint, owning failure, owning mistakes, I think is a absolute necessity.
Yeah.
I know for me, this example leaps to mind of coaching a club team one year, and I typically always made sure we trained really hard so that we were tough enough to win, hard enough to win. In that particular season, I took my eye off that ball. I got distracted with some technical or tactical things, and we wound up not qualifying for national championships. And I remember the last tournament of the year, the last point, the other team just dumped the ball in the middle of the court.
Nobody went after it.
Everybody stood there.
Oof. Terrible way to end the season.
And I looked at the person coaching with me and I said, that is entirely my fault. All of this is my fault. And then I had other people, other coaches, try to absolve me of responsibility and point out whatever weaknesses. I said, no. None of that is true. It's my job to find a way. And I did not do that. And I have to learn from this and be better. And I said, if you don't want to take that approach, if you can't handle that, don't be in charge.
Yeah.
Being the head coach means you're responsible for everything that goes bad. And then you disperse credit when everything goes well. Yeah. That's just how it goes.
That's that kind of trickle down, like I kind of mentioned last week, in the culture and the leadership that the coach emulates to the team then the teammates start to act that way as well. And so it even trickles down to like not just court play, but how they walk around off the court or when they're in their social settings. Just that type of from the top down, which is what you're saying is like that ownership of everyone else saw that as none of those 6 girls went for that ball. But you saw it as I didn't train them to go hard for every single point every single time because the effort wasn't there. So you view that as a lack of training.
Absolutely.
Whereas everybody else views it as a lack of effort, but the two are not mutually exclusive.
Well, I mean, I've had so many coaches say to me that you can't train competitive spirit,
I don't
can't train
I think we decided
toughness.
it wasn't true once, right? We talked
And
about that.
It's just, I couldn't disagree more.
Yeah.
But like I know in the book Extreme Ownership, Jocko talks about a situation where a friendly fire incident, which is a total disaster. His bosses were like flying in to conduct this hearing, and he's analyzing how did this happen, and it just ultimately said, even though I wasn't there, this is my fault. And so when he went before, even though his men were all in the back and they were all trying to say it was their fault, he's the one who claimed responsibility for that
Like from the top.
because of it's his job to train them to make sure those things don't happen. He knew he could possibly lose his job or be demoted
Yeah.
in rank, and he was demoted in rank. But he also hammered home the point that he was trustworthy, dependable,
Yeah.
and would accept responsibility. And you think that was forgotten by the
No,
people
absolutely not.
who work with him as well as the people above him. So I think that's what fosters the kind of culture we want to be a part of, what we want to develop. And it doesn't matter what athletics, business, it just doesn't
Life,
matter.
anything. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
your household.
Right.
And I think that willingness to embrace and teach that kind of responsibility. I know I was texting with Katie Kozlowski coming over here. She has a 3-year-old daughter, and they just do this kind of stuff all the time. She was giving me these examples of, one, how her daughter will help hold her accountable for her training. And she'll freely admit, I don't feel like training. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And so her daughter's there encouraging her. And then she's on the other foot and they go for a walk up some hill. She may want to not finish the walk
get
or
picked up
turn
or-
back. Be picked up. And instead it's, nope, keep going.
Yeah.
You can even cry on the way if you want
Yeah.
to, but we're going to keep going.
Yep.
And another thing they do that I thought was really cool, they'll stop and look back how far they've come, which is a cool lesson as well. But she talked about how she doesn't do things for her all the time. She'll
Yeah.
do things with her, help her. And it's so easy to raise a dependent
It's
child.
way easier to do that.
Much easier. You're in the same boat. We're a little past that with the age of our kids, although it's still like, if they could, they'd be weighted on hand and foot by the two of us. Yours are younger. We're similar to a little older than her.
We're still building a little bit
kids,
that mindset. But yeah, I mean, I think that is I learned that really early on. It's way easier to pick them up and carry them, or way easier to let them off the hook for something. Or like one thing for us is especially my little guy, he will pull out every toy from the playroom and bring it to the living room. And at the end, it's too much to clean up. I need help. I'm like, well, you were able to get it all
Yep.
out, so you should be able to put it all back. And I've figured out now, because it used to be, if you got it all out at the end, I was like, okay, now put it away. It's like I would wait till it was like right now it's bedtime, and it was like a rush to put it away, which was too much. But now, as I see him starting to like pull the things out, I'm like, remember, buddy, if you don't put something back when you're taking this out, you're gonna have to put everything. So it's trying to also teach him that kind of idea of like, if you think that you're gonna get to a point where it's gonna be too hard, let's discover that ahead of time, and what can we do before it's gotten to the point where it's way too difficult, that we can help mitigate that at the end of the night or at the end of the play session or whatever it is. And I think I figured out that works well for him. doesn't work for my other one necessarily. Like the kind of like meeting you halfway, like my daughter's just like, she just butts on fire all the time doing a million things. So there's no time to slow down to say like, hey, maybe we should. But also just her being 2 years older than him, she also kind of has some of those skills already developed. So I think that idea of just like I like the looking back to see how far you came. I think for little kids, especially when they're struggling, to see that, because like if we look down the street at 100 yards, like we realize it's not that far, but for them it's like a mile, right? Like it feels like they made it a long way. So again, that kind of reminding, like I will if we went to Target last weekend and I had some returns that I didn't. One of them was a shirt that I bought my daughter that apparently she wanted to keep, but she had more in it, so I was like, all right, I'm taking it back. And she saw me hand it over to return, and she just was not very happy about that. And she wanted to stand in the return section until I decided I was going to buy it back. I was like, all right, well, we're going to go shopping for the things we came for. You can hang out here all you want. Like, of course, I'm not going to leave her there, but I'm just cut it off right there. I'm not going to stand here and have this conversation. The decision has been made, and she's going to have to figure out. And it took her 5 minutes to stop moping about it, but I think that's a way better decision. I feel like I constantly am hearing parents be like, well, you seem a little frustrated. How can we help that? And like, I think there is something to helping young kids identify what they're feeling versus just like mad and sad or whatever they are. Things that make me want to throw up are just like let's stop everything and how can like all 9 of us help you through this? And I'm all for support. I'm all for like emotional intelligence, but it's got to come from within at some point. If the only way you teach those kids is that they have to have a group of people to help them figure out what's going on and how to dig out of the hole, they're going to need that forever. Like at some point, you've got to create that independence and responsibility from within.
Well, I mean, the whole goal of parenting or leadership of any kind is to
Make
foster
them not need
independence.
you.
Yeah,
Right.
so that you're not needed. And the whole notion of extreme ownership, that is taking responsibility for everything in your life, whether it's your health, rather than just ceding that to a doctor.
Or letting it always be reactionary. Like there are proactive things we can be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a podcast coming over here. Sean Ryan was talking about the VA and how they just want to give you drugs, and talked about all these veterans who become addicted. Because it's so easy. One, it's easy for you to go in and trust that the doctor has your best interest at heart.
It's easy for them to write a prescription instead of fix you.
It's much easier for the doctor to, here, take these pills.
Yep.
And rather than stopping and say, whoa. And
Like, what's the root of this issue?
yeah, and so that's just one area where you have to take ownership. Never mind, the workplace where so many people want to deflect, so they don't look bad. Meanwhile, you look good if you accept responsibility.
Oh, way better.
And then you're in pursuit of a solution.
Yeah.
Rather than spending all your days just
I think especially
shifting blame.
I think especially in a setting where there is a failure, like that example you gave about the friendly fire thing. It can feel hard to take responsibility because the people who don't understand what it means to take responsibility might view it as like, oh, well, yeah, jerk, it was your fault kind of thing. But like you said, people who step up and take the responsibility, like it might feel embarrassing, I guess is what I'm getting at, or embarrassing or shameful or whatever you feel, to say like, yes, this was my failure that I accept was, a fault on my end. But like you said, when you approach that from first of all, I don't care what people think, I'm going to take responsibility because it's the right thing to do. But also, and I'm going to find a solution to fix the problem for next time. That's where you build back, like, okay, maybe they lost some trust because you let something down, but when you come back around, you build that trust back to say I have a solution, and now going forward, it won't happen again because I've implemented these strategies. I think is way more respectable than someone who just either won't take any responsibility and has no solutions.
It comes to, it even goes back again to, like, I think an establishment of like core values and your personal credo, like what kind of person are you going to be, and who are you becoming? But if you're just fixated on like these outcomes and that's where your identity and worth is found, then the mistake is like a massive blow to that,
Right.
and a kind of a sense of perfectionism or whatever. But if you have this growth mindset or whatever, an open-minded view of all of this, where you're just kind of every day you're trying to get better, and every day trying to learn, every day you're trying to grow, every day you're trying to teach others, set a good example. mistakes are going to happen.
Always.
But I mean, you constantly hear extremely successful people talking about failure, and all that is just a chance to learn. And
A lot of times the failure stories are the ones that launch them to become
Right.
what they are now, because they learned that lesson, like, I can't do that again. And to, I mean, not overcorrect in a bad way, but just like really steer the other direction so that won't happen again, to then again pursue success and pursue greatness, and not let those things stop the process.
yeah, I mean that's the whole Thomas Edison thing where he goes, I didn't fail 10,000 times in trying to find the right filament. I learned 10,000 times.
Right.
Well, this one doesn't
It
work.
doesn't work.
Yeah, that much closer to the next one.
Yep.
And Babe Ruth, that was his quote about striking out. It's just one more at bat
Yeah.
closer to the next home run.
Yep. I feel like, and this is an example from just this morning sitting on the couch with my kids, but in that example of the 10,000 failures versus 10,000 learning lessons, we are constantly taking in data. Always. We don't really realize it, but like the way that you learn to not, spill your coffee is because you've spilled your coffee, and so you learn that you need to hold the cup upright, or if it's too full, you don't want to swatch. Like, you learn because those mistakes happen. So this morning we're sitting on the couch, and my little guy leans over to talk to me, and everything on his plate just slides off. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, like, hold your plate. But he doesn't. That's not something the first time I ever gave him the plate. I mean, I might have said be careful, but I didn't explain how gravity works, right? So for him, he kind of has to experience that. Okay, when I do this, or I can hold the plate, but if I lean, it's going to lean with me. And just those little bits of information that we take in all the time to learn the lesson that, okay, like the whole reaction. It's Newton's third law was, by the way, that equal and
Nice.
opposite reaction thing. But I think that constant data that we're taking in, I looked it up. I was curious. That constant data that we're taking in is how we learn lessons, and then we use that data to progress forward in whatever direction that is, and hopefully it's in a positive one. But again, it's reshaping those lessons learned to be an arsenal for you going forward. Is like, I don't even know that we always know that we're doing it, because there are so many small things where it's not just sports related as we normally talk about, but everything we do, your brain picks up.
Well, and rather than viewing everything like that as some kind of body blow,
Right.
that, or maybe you should just serve your kids stickier foods.
Mm-hmm.
That way it won't slide.
Just pour some syrup on it next time.
Yeah. Glue.
It was a Pop-Tart, so it couldn't have
It's
gotten
probably
much.
edible glue now. I don't know. I'm just thinking. But that's, I think, the earlier you can learn these lessons, the better. That's why teaching your children those lessons is crucial. Like putting them in situations where they are going to learn those lessons.
Challenged.
Hopefully, like in athletics or whatever it is, like scouting, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Anything where there's an opportunity to do hard things, to struggle, and to overcome on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then just as you get older, you just keep fostering that mentality. And I mean, even in the workplace, adults, I mean, it's not my fault. Like, no,
Yeah.
like that's
It
not going to
is.
get us anywhere.
Right.
And I would much prefer someone who's making mistakes, but they're willing to own it and then keep trying to find ways to make things right.
Right.
To find solutions, answers. That is the kind of character you want to develop. And no one is moved or inspired. No one writes songs and stories about people who shift blame and never accept responsibility.
Yeah.
That's not, hopefully, who we're reading
I
about in
hope
history
not.
books.
We talk about the service of others a lot, and like if you're serving others, you're inherently sort of working on yourself in that way. And I think in a group setting, whether it's in a work setting or a team setting, accepting responsibility and then being the one who's going to come up with a solution for how it to not occur going forward is service of those other team members or the other people in that group, because you accept the responsibility and you take on the role of, I'm going to figure this out so that we as a group don't fail. Because typically that failure in this setting, with team setting, it wasn't like one person didn't go for that ball and so that one person just lost the whole game for everybody. It was a group effort where everyone together experienced the result of the failure, but you took on that responsibility, and now maybe you didn't have that exact same team the next year, but going forward you were learning how to then reinstill that strategy in your team so that that didn't happen again. And to me, that is a service of others when you are trying to make sure that not everybody's going to fail as a group. And if we do, I'm going to figure out how to fix it and take accountability for that.
I know I was watching a football game last weekend, NFL, and
See,
kicker
I
missed
see.
a fairly
Easy.
short kick. It was blocked. And you didn't see him. How'd you let that guy through?
Right.
Or point at the holder. You could tell he felt
Yep.
responsible. And, of course, then his teammates, they didn't shove him and, what's wrong with you? You stink. Why are you even getting paid to do this? No, they were all, like, trying to make him.
Why is this even your job?
They were all trying to make him feel better.
Yeah.
And that's where realizing that all our fortunes are connected,
Yeah.
whether it's in our family or on a team or in a business
Right.
setting. And the more we can support each other when we make mistakes, and the more we can own whatever mistakes we make, that's how we all are able to then produce results that may be beyond what we could on an individual
Yeah.
level. So if we have a team at work, like, they could produce wonderful things, or they could not.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to complain, find reasons why you can't, make excuses and shift.
It's like the venting episode we talked about. Just like
Yep.
it's really easy just to talk about like, oh, like be kind of victim-y about things. And I know, like, I'm thinking about an example, like in sports, you see a lot of like, oh, my bad, like you see that a lot. And
I really don't like that.
I don't either because I think it's one thing if you have built credibility that when you say my bad, people know that it wasn't just an excuse for the issue. It was like I recognize the failure there, and I know how to fix it. So I think it drove me nuts when I was playing. So I was like, oh my bad. Like yeah, that was your bad. Is it going to happen again, or is it your bad? And so next time I'll do this instead, so it's not my bad this time. So I think that kind of idea is like there's a difference between like taking accountability and taking accountability. It's two different things. It's
Right.
It's there's the reaction of my bad, and then there's the reaction with the new action of my bad, and I'm going to do this to fix it next time, which are two very different things. One builds a complete lack of trust, and one builds way more trust and credibility with the people around you. That if you consistently, like I don't have a problem with people saying my bad if there's
Right.
an action afterwards to fix the bad, but it's the constant.
Right. It's my bad, and then no adjustments.
Or like you see-
Nothing's changed.
I love when people like miss a serve and they're like, oh, like something just all of a sudden they had a
yeah.
quick little injury mid serve, like.
Baseball players
a-
who make errors look
Look
at
at
their
their
glove.
hand. Yeah, it's very similar, type of
Yeah.
just. And I think it's just a gut reaction to try to find something in yourself of what the issue was, but
Well,
there's
it's not wanting to let everybody know that
that you just.
there
screwed
are
up.
no reasons
Right.
other than. Well, I know the first time where the my bad thing,
Oh, might
was
be.
that's what she would do. She'd tap her chest, my B.
Oh, this athlete you want
And
to talk about.
yes, she would routinely serve the ball and then fail to get
To go
to
deep to
base
defense.
defense. And so often that gaping
Stand there
hole
and
would
watch
be
her serve.
there, and then she would let everyone at my bad.
But it was the same thing
So-
all the time.
Like, that's where I'm sorry. Like, you may be kind of taking ownership of an error, but you're not really,
But you're not fixing it.
because you're not doing anything
Right.
to not have this happen again.
Right.
So it became I can still see her doing it, and it's just a very unpleasant
Mm-hmm.
memory. That's not extreme ownership.
Right.
That's kind of BS, fake
Just like empty
ownership.
blaming, like it's nothing.
And extreme ownership means you are owning what happened, but you are also finding solutions to make sure it doesn't happen again. Jocko, in that book, with the incident we talked about, the friendly fire, not only did he accept ownership, but he also laid out very detailed plans
Right.
for how this would never happen again.
Yeah, you accept the ownership and you accept the responsibility to
For
come up
fix
with
it.
for fixing it. Yeah.
And that's to me, that's very much like a pro-growth
Yeah.
way to view any situation, and that's how we want to live. We don't just want to stumble along and then with every mistake
Whatever happens, happen. Yeah.
might be, or the opposite, where these perfectionist type
Ugh.
standards are in place, where if you take responsibility for failing, it's like getting punched in the face or
Right.
something. So it's like,
You just
no.
it
Like,
never happens at all. Just don't let it happen. Kind of aggressive extreme of it, but that's something that I've learned to feel more confident in as I've gotten older. Is just like it's okay to admit that you failed. People respect that, and people have built more faith in you if you can take the responsibility and then fix it going forward. But I think the earlier you can just practicing and not an empty, my bad, like an actual, and I think it helps to like. I know like earlier on in my career, at work, if something went wrong, my instinct was to just say, "I'm sorry. That was my fault that happened." But I later started practicing, hey, I know that whatever went wrong, that was that was a miss on my part, and then adding, going forward, I'll do this to make sure that doesn't happen again. And that just becomes a practice. Sometimes it's hard to say out loud. Sometimes it's hard to even think in your head to say like, oh, that was my fault. But the more you practice and then sort of add like the next steps to it, it becomes easier and it becomes a better way of progressing forward and learning those lessons built into those failures.
well, that's where people then believe you when you
Right.
actually say you're sorry,
Right.
as opposed to you have no answers and don't put forth any effort to find answers. Well, then it's empty talk.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, if we're promoting the idea that we care about each other in a work setting or a team setting, that includes moving past owning the mistake to also owning the process moving forward to find solutions.
Well, it instills confidence that you don't just take ownership, but you are responsible for the outcomes. That's something that when the person who is inherently looked to at the top or whatever first, if that person can model that behavior, you're either going to avoid some of those failures that you might otherwise have had, or be able to find success through those and grow as a group together.
Yeah, I just think promoting the notion of resilience, perseverance, overcoming,
Can't go wrong with
regardless of circumstance. And that's not to say that like you should never quit anything.
Right.
Like,
that's an
no.
extreme too. That's hard to.
Right. I've had people ask me about like their kid in a youth sport setting where like during the season they're miserable, they hate it, they don't want to go. Do we let them quit? And not during the season.
Yeah.
Like, but I think if they don't want to play that sport anymore,
the next season,
okay.
Right.
But they also have to learn that we're going to finish what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to honor our commitments. And so that moving forward, like I don't care what it is. You can be an adult and you can either cut and run or you can say, no, I am still here and I am coming. And I talked this morning about you roll out of bed, like you roll out on the hunt.
Yeah.
And when you show up to work, that's the mentality you bring in to this place.
Yep.
And then it's about like always finding a way, like, and not relying on what you feel like doing in the moment.
A lot of things we wouldn't do if that's all we did.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's insane. And I mean, instead of we know processes are in place. If we want to be excellent in what we're doing, then we follow those processes. And it doesn't matter whether we feel like it or not. It doesn't matter what time it is. It's just what you do if you're going to be as good as you can be, and also knowing that every decision you make doesn't just affect you, but it affects the well-being of everyone else that's involved.
Yep.
And you choosing to not do your job or not to find a solution to a mistake just means you're shifting that onto someone else who's already got enough to do.
Yeah.
And if we say we care about our teammates or our fellow employees or our family members, like, then we don't keep doing the same wrong thing over and over and then just, my bad.
Yeah.
Instead, we're trying to live every day where we're better.
Yep.
And I don't make the same mistake every day this week.
What's that phrase about preparation and opportunity? Like, the other one?
Preparation beats opportunity. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I asked ChatGPT because it's the one that also gave me the Newton's third law of gravity, or The third law of
I would think by now that
success
phone
is where preparation meets opportunity.
There you go. Who said it?
Probably anonymous.
I hate that.
Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. But cliche as that might sound, I do think there is something to be said of when opportunity comes across your desk or comes across your computer or comes across your life. Stupid example. Like you win the lottery. If you have no financial education, is that going to completely go up in flames?
Yep. That's
Or-
routinely what happens. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I mean, not that we need to be prepping every day to win the lottery, right? But there are things that we can be doing to prepare ourselves for various things. That's something that I think is admirable about all the books that you read. Like, you don't care what the subject matter is. If it's someone's biography or like whatever it is, you learn things about just broadening your way of thinking, broadening your view of the world. And so you're prepared if someone wants to have a conversation, or you're prepared if something happens, like you know how you're going to think. I don't just mean you anymore. I've had enough talking about you. But just generally, those people who prepare themselves or who are willing to be open-minded, that's when you have that can be a version of being prepared for opportunity. You never know who you're going to talk to on an airplane. You never know who you're going to run into. I mean, I think my mom said that, like, when she was growing up, her mom told her to always make sure she's dressed just in case you meet the president, which is probably like a little aggressive and kind of weird and outdated for sure. But that's one of those. That's
the president of what?
The United States.
He's got his own plane, man.
Not on a plane, just in general. Just in general.
Oh, okay.
Her rule of thumb was you should
Walking
always
through
be
the
put
mall.
together
Hey,
just in case.
there's the president.
Yes. I think I'll have to ask my mom, but I think it was something like that. Just, I mean, it was probably just one of those little things she would say to get the kids up and running in the morning. But that was sort of their, like, why you should always be like put together. So you might never know when you're gonna meet the president.
You never know.
But that, I mean, that's a completely separate and trivial form of preparation. But the more that we can become aware of Newton's third law of gravity, or then you can use it in the conversation. I mean, it's dumb as it sounds. It is. The more you can broaden yourself, the more that things open up.
I know the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking about, I went to a book signing with Vince Flynn, who writes these Mitch Rapp thriller novels. He had passed away from prostate cancer several years ago, but a friend of mine and I went to Charlotte to see him, and he was just beyond interesting. But his character, for those who don't know, was kind of a CIA assassin, basically. And so he knows a lot about the inner workings of all these intelligence groups, and including the Secret Service. So he was walking down the street in New York, and he could just tell somebody important is here. So then he keeps going and sees some Secret Service guys, and sure enough, it was Bill Clinton, who so he was
president.
Ready to meet the president. I think that's where, whether it's like physical training, taking ownership of your health, your diet, nutrition, taking ownership of your health, supplementation for that. If you're an athlete, it's so easy to underachieve. I always think of a character in Napoleon Dynamite, Uncle Rico, who's always bemoaning
High school days.
the fact that if he could
throw a football over that mountain.
throw the football over that mountain, if coach would have just put him in, we'd have won states, and I would have made it to the NFL. And
I frequently want to send you Napoleon Dynamite gifts, and then I can't remember if you're like a lover or a hater of that movie, and that just
I
affirmed it.
love that
That's
movie.
what I always think that, and I'm like, I don't know if I can't remember.
That movie's hilarious. But I think a lot of people will talk a good game.
What could have been.
Yep. And rather than, I talked about this young man this morning. His name's Gabriel. I worked with him during the summer of 8th grade and 9th grade, and very intentional about who he wants to be and where he wants to go. I was always inspired by him. Like, when I was finished talking to him, like, I'm getting paid to talk to him, but he's inspiring me.
Yeah.
And he was so together.
For an 8th grade boy, that's impressive.
I don't think I've ever met anyone like him. I'm not exaggerating. So admirable in so many ways. But he was also very hungry to learn how he could become his best possible self. And some of it had to do with his performance athletically, but some of it had to do with just who he wanted to be.
Right.
And he was perceptive enough to kind of dig into that part of this whole process. But that's a kid, he took extreme ownership of his performance outcomes and future goals. And it's like a perfect example of a young man who is not leaving things to chance. And it's a perfect example of extreme ownership. And even as a 14-year-old boy, when I look at back at myself at 14, oh my gosh,
Nightmare.
it's the difference between him and me is immeasurable at that age.
Preparation and opportunity, baby.
You said it. Can't argue with that. So that's the willingness to own it.
Yeah.
So then you can turn around and just look for ways to become who you want to become, and even broaden your vision of who you can become. I think that's the way to play it.
Yeah, if you want to earn it, you got to own it.
Nice. You should write greeting cards. That was good. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unbound Performance Podcast.
Your support helps us continue to build our community. If you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, and share.